And all right, welcome Alex Wang. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. So can you see my screen, Ella?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
So I can see your screen, but your slides aren't. Yeah, there you go.
Great. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Alex Wang. Welcome to Sbir and STTR webinar. So today, as Ella mentioned, we are going to introduce 3 parts. One is the basic information about those programs. The second part, we are going to talk about how to apply them. Finally, we come to the detailed item. If we want to prepare, where should we start? So let's start with the first part. Sbir is a small business innovation research program. Its sister program, STTR, is a small business technology transfer program. The first Sbir started by National Science Foundation in 1977. By early 1980s, the other federal agency also participated. Those 2 programs, they come with a so-called provision, which means they need to be renewed and extended every few years. And during the renewal, sometimes they add a new initiative into that. The last renewal of those programs was in 2018. That one will last until 2022 to 2023. The way for the program to work is the participated funding agency, they are going to allocate a small portion of their research fund to engage in small business. And those are the money to hand out for the Sbir and Stdr. For the current fiscal year, there are total $3.5 billion for Sbir. Stdr have less money than that. It's below $500 million. Essentially, every 7 Sbir project, there could be like 1 STTR project. Here are the goals for the government to set up those programs. As you can see, the government intended to stimulate technology innovation and bring more frontier technology to the market. I want to bring your attention to the second point. They want to use the small business to meet the federal needs. What does it mean? Every year, the federal government have a lot of procurement from the private sector, some of them from big corporations, and some of them from the smaller companies. A lot of startups, they have excellent technology, but they do need help to eventually become the vendor and contractor for the federal government. We will see the importance of this one in my later slide. What are the value of those programs for us, the small business? I think at least there are 4 parts we can look into. The first one is reputation. About 15% of the total applicant eventually get Sbir phase 1. So every 1 out of the 6 applications get granted for Sbir phase 1. And among phase 1, a little bit less than half of that can get Sbir Stdr phase 2. So it is a very competitive field. Allow me to make a comparison. If I was an investor, such as representing venture capital, I'm looking at the startup. I will pay more attention to the company who succeed in Sbir and STTR. The way for the phases almost as much as business school students apply for job. They have CFA 1, 2, 3, certified financial analyst. Depending on which level you have, the job market, and in this case will be investors, they probably understand what kind of expertise and how readiness your commercialization is. The second point is most of the Sbir, STTR money, they do not ask for equity. They come either as a contract or as a grant, with one exception. That is the so-called bridge fund in NCI, National Cancer Institute. That is the money up to $2 million after phase 2 of Sbir or STTR require equal amount of the matching from another investor, the private investor. Beyond that, all of the SBIR, STTR money, they are not diluted. Once you enter those programs, you will enjoy data protection right over 20 years. This is a new initiative because before 2018, the data protection only lasts for 4 years. This is very important and bring a lot of value to your business. In my later slide, I will explain to you. Finally, as I already mentioned a little bit, you have a chance to become the sole source procurement provider for the government. What does a sole source procurement mean and why it is such a valuable thing? I will explain to you. But first, let's look into phases of SBIR and STTR. We use NASA program as an example. Here, as you can see, all of the SBIR, STTR, they have 3 phases. The first one relatively small and only lasts between 6 months to 13 months. The amount of the money is $125,000. In case of the NASA, they format that one into contract. They don't have the grant. For phase 2, the money increased to $750,000 and lasts for 2 years. That become a very important investment. Phase 3, in fact, phase 3 money does not come from SBIR, STTR. They may come from private sector, or if the government sign contract with you, that one may come from the procurement and other type of the contract. Here, there's a term called infusion. That is a term you're going to see a lot in NASA. That one refers to the technology you co-develop with NASA, eventually have a very good market potential in other sectors, especially the private market. That is something the government encourage. Let's look at another example. This is one of the DoD, Department of Defense example. Here, as you notice, there's DON down. That refers to Department of Navy. Essentially, we are looking at Navy SBIR and STTR. As we can see, there's also 3 phases. The unique aspect of Navy fund is they have 2 portions for each phase, the base and the option. Take phase 1, for example. That one can grant you a contract of $125,000. Your application may be eligible to get an extra $100,000 option. For phase 2, you may end up in $500,000 to $1 million base, but if you can get option, you will get 50% more. Essentially, phase 2 can reach as much as $1.5 million. You'll also notice that there's so-called subsequent phase 2. Phase 2 have a few variations. I mentioned, and let me explain, that conventionally, people who are eligible to apply for phase 2, they already got phase 1. Any newcomer who haven't get approved by phase 1 is not eligible for phase 2. But phase 2, there are a few variants. One variant is so-called sequential phase 2, as over here in Navy. The other one called direct phase 2. I will explain each. Sequential phase 2, that one take into consideration that some technology will take longer time to commercialize. Therefore, one phase 2 is not enough. In case of Navy, if they believe that is the case, they can give you the second phase 2, which means it could be $500,000, $1 million, or $1.5 million, including option. But that's it. There will no third phase 2, subsequent one. So that is so-called sequential phase 2. In different Fed agencies, they may have different name. The other one is so-called direct phase 2. That refers the announcement, solicitation that the newcomer can apply for phase 2 directly without going through phase 1. For example, NIH have some announcement of the direct phase 2. In the case of Navy, the maximum amount of the contract of those programs together, one phase 1, to phase 2, including subsequent, and also you get the option, can sum up a total of $3.225 million, which make Navy's fund one of the richest ones. So what are those three phases mean to us, to the small startup? So here's a vision to look at. As I mentioned, there are different kind of value, let's say non-dilutive term, data protection. The big picture, in fact, is phase 3 is very, very important. Phase 1 can be relatively quick and small, but that one establish a very good foundation so that you have a very good chance to continue with phase 2. After phase 2, the outcome of that one can lead to discussion with government. They may want to buy it. Some agencies, they are more operational, such as Department of Defense, NASA, Department of Energy, but not all the agencies. Agencies like NIH, National Science Foundation, they don't procure from the Sbir and STTR programs. So phase 3, if government reach out to you and they believe the outcome of phase 2 indeed is very good, they want to buy it and use it. That one can lead to a multi-year contract, and then the contract can be as big as multi-million dollars. Essentially, you become their vendor, contractor, and provider. Not only that, you can become a sole source vendor, sole source procurement provider. The source of procurement refer to, you don't need to go through solicitation and RP process. Normally, when government want to buy something, they need to make a solicitation so that multiple companies can make a bid. That is not the case if you emerge from Sbir and Stdr. You will be the only one they want to negotiate with. The reason of that is you already prove your technology is good enough, and also you save government a lot of time and money to go through the paperwork. Once you enter that process with the government, and also once you're on track with Sbir and Stdr, you will enjoy the data protection right. What does that mean? Any data generated during the project will be between you and the government. Without your consent, government are not supposed to share and disclose that one to the third party. However, government will be allowed to share the data between their agencies. For example, your Sbir is with Department of Energy. NOAA, NASA, and the DOD, they will be able to see those data. And we understand the government have a lot of big corporations of their contractor provide sophisticated system for them, such as aviation, ship, and also vehicles. Your technology may be one small part or the technology to integrate into their platform. Therefore, it is not practical to manufacture in large scope and also to manufacture alone by yourself. Therefore, the large corporation may be more suitable to manufacture that one for the government, such as Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, General Dynamics, if we're talking about the defense sector. The data protection right guarantee you the government cannot share your data with those big corporations. Therefore, there's no way the big corporation can bypass you and can make the protection. The most likely approach is they are going to reach out to you, to your company, negotiate with the licensing, and in some occasion, in fact, the big corporation probably just invest in your company or acquire your company for good. Therefore, as you can see, data protection right and the source of procurement during the phase 3 bring huge value. Not only you land a very important customer, but also you have the leverage to attract investment and decide what is the future strategy is. Before we go to the next slide, I want to point out data protection right and IP, they are not the same thing. IP is a process you disclose your knowledge to the public. Data protection is under the government under the government agreement with you, you keep things secret. If you have the new invention in the process, you can decide to go either way, because some of the knowledge, you may decide it is more suitable to keep that one as your secret, for example, as a trade secret, rather than rush to file for IP. Therefore, data protection right also gives you flexibility, one more pathway to maneuver to protect your interest. Which agency participate Sbir and Stdr? Currently, there are 11 funding agencies. Among 11, 5 largest ones, DOD, HHS, including NIH, National Science Foundation, NASA, and the DOE, they also provide STTR. Among the Department of Defense, each division, they manage their own Sbir and Sdtr, which means Army, Navy, and Air Force, and a few other smaller agencies, they all have their own Sbir and Stdr. And I also want to point out between different agencies, the way they approach those programs, there are some difference in the detail. Come back to the DoD. Navy and Army are the largest funding resource, and they can provide as much as $300 million every year. Air Force is shortly behind, which are around $200 million. For HHS, the biggest funding comes from NIH. That one are already beyond $800 million, nearly $1 billion total. The structure for NIH is NIH have more than 20 institutes. The largest one is NCI, National Cancer Institute. They each come up their topic, and NIH are going to bring them together and manage Sbir and STTR together coordinately. What are the differences between the two programs? Those are the differences. I want to bring your attention to the 3 key differences. STTR require involvement of IP and tech transfer. Sbir does not need that. Therefore, an ideal format for STTR to work is your company collaborate with the university, license a technology and IP. Therefore, that is a very good foundation to fit into Sdtr. If you don't have any involvement of IP, you probably should consider Sbir. Sdtr also require your company to collaborate with either a nonprofit or FFRDC, which is Federal Funded Research and Development Center. I will tell you what are they. For each application, you need a principal investigator, PI. For STTR, that person needs to be the employee of the small business, your business. For Sdtr, that person can be either with your company or with the research institute. There is flexibility on that term. So what are the RI and FFRDC? To make nonprofit RI simple, it just refers to university. So if you collaborate with university, you are collaborating with RI. There are totally 42 FFRDC in the United States. One in our area is Frederick National Laboratory of Cancer Research. The other example is Lawrence National Lab, based in UC Berkeley. All those FFRDC, they are private entity. In the case of Lawrence National Lab, it is sponsored by Department of Energy, but managed by UC Berkeley. You can choose those institutes as your collaboration and even license their technology in your program, in your project. Before we move on for the next one, for the next portion of application, is there any question?
If you have any questions, please either submit them via the Q&A function, or you can raise your hand and I can unmute your camera and allow you to speak.
Okay, so we can continue.
Yeah, I don't see any questions, Alex.
Yeah. But on my screen, once I click on Q&A, this one does not shut down. How should I do that?
What happened?
Can you see my screen that
Yes.
there's no open question, but I want to get rid of this field? How do I do that? Let's see. Please allow me to pause share and share again. Just 1 second. Okay.
Yeah. So we can't see anything on top of your slide. We just see your slide.
Yeah, that's okay. I just need the button to shut down the small window. So let's resume.
Yep.
Share.
Sure.
Thank you for your patience. So we are back. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so let me present.
Yeah,
so
perfect.
Who are eligible to apply? Let's start with a small business. What kind of small business can apply for Sbir and Stdr? First, you need to be for-profit. Non-profit alone cannot apply, but non-profit could as a collaborator. You need to be a small business. The definition of small business is you don't have more than 500 employees. There will be a complication, which I will mention later. That is, what happens if your holding company, your parent company is a large corporation? All of the Sbir and STTR work need to be done in the US. For example, consider to use a vendor and subcontractor overseas like India and China because their cost is much more lower. You can do that. And also, who are the major investor of your company? So that one will define whether you are the United States company or you are foreign holding company. Next, let's look at the researcher or the PI. In order to become the PI, for Sbir, you must be employed by the small business when the application is approved. For example, if you are a full-time university professor, you also create your own company and you apply for Sbir. That could be an issue because it is unlikely you can establish yourself as full-time employee for the company because you are full-time working for the university. You do need to show that you have expertise in the field and you are capable to implement the project. Therefore, your resume will be included in your application. It is not required that you have to have a senior degree, advanced degree like PhD or MD. Those are the questions keep coming up when people put application together. Some companies, they are based in Europe. For example, a German company is interested to move to Maryland and operate. They want to apply. The time when you submit your application, the company needs to be a US company, which means your company needs to be registered in the United States. And for some agency like DOD, it is very clear that more than 50% of your employee will be US citizen. So different agencies have different requirements in details. A few years ago, if your company already be invested by venture capital, that will make you ineligible to apply for Sbir and Stdr anymore. Now they change the rule. Depend on whether VC or private equity, they are the majority holder or not. In some agencies, such as NIH, they will allow you to apply for Sbir or Stdr as long as they are not the majority holder. All those details are included in their announcement. Let's look at the researcher side. What happens if you're a full-time University of Maryland researcher, either a postdoc or a faculty? You would be eligible to apply as a PI if you are looking into STTR. If that's not the case, you can be invited as a collaboration, either the subcontractor or the consultant to participate. We have many foreign nationals in our area doing the research. They are either on working visa H1, or they are the student on F1, or they could hold J1 visa. You could be eligible to participate, depending on which agency and what program. Some agencies, they have more stringent requirements, such as the security clearance. In that case, foreign nationals, they may not be able to participate in those kind of programs. And as a company, any kind of employee, team member, or subcontractor you include, you need to be clear to disclose the nationality background to the agency, especially if the technology is sensitive. If you happen to be an independent consultant, you will be eligible to serve as a subcontractor and participate. Subcontracting and collaboration is a very important aspect for Sbir and STTR. In fact, they encourage you to do so. For Sbir, according to the budget and working amount, in phase 1, you can subcontract as much as 1/3. In phase 2 Sbir, that one can increase from 1/3 to 1/2. STTR gives you more flexibility because STTR include at least 2 parties. Your company is a small business and also a research institute, let's say it's a university. You have to conduct at least 40% of the work, and the university have to do 30% of work, nothing less. For the remaining 30%, it can either go to your company or let university do that. Alternatively, you can make that 30% and get another subcontractor. In summary, for STTR, if that one only 2 parties between you and the research institute, your company can conduct as much as 40 to 70%, and then your research partner, the university, can do as much as 30 to 60%. So that gives you a lot of flexibility. Some of our audience today are researchers based in university are looking into to get research fund. In fact, stage 2, phase 2 of those programs, the amount of the funding is very good. In the case of Navy, you are looking at between $1 million to as much as $3 million in total. If the university can do 30 to 60% of work of those funding, that amount of the money is significant. When they review application, what are they looking into? There are 3 categories of the criteria they are looking into. The first one is your technology. Are they innovative enough? The second one is to look at your capacity to implement the project. The most important one in this category is your team. You need to demonstrate a very strong team by including your best people, as well as attracting collaboration, including some expert. Finally, they want to look into impact, which refers to commercialization prospect and marketing potential. They want to see after you complete the Sbir and STTR, you are in better position to sell your product to the broader market or the big contractor for the government. In your application, you need to address those. We complete our second portion of the webinar. Is there any question before we move to the final portion?
I don't see any questions. If anybody would like to submit them, please do so or raise your hand.
In that case, we can continue move on and save all the questions by the end, okay?
Sounds like a good plan. Thank you, Alex.
Before we plan to take Sbir and STTR seriously, which can take a lot of time and a lot of work, we need to understand why 5 out of the 6 applications, they don't get funded. What are the reasons they fell short, okay? So I have opportunity to talk to some project manager of agency who cover Sbir and STTR. And those are the reasons coming up, okay? So the top 2 reasons they keep mentioning is the team in the proposal is not strong enough. So again, I emphasize you need to build a very strong team to impress the reviewer. The second reason, in fact, they mentioned is the budget in the proposal is not good enough or is not convincing. Here, allow me to briefly introduce you the three parts of the budget in your application. The first part is the direct cost. Second part is indirect cost or the overhead. Third part is so-called fees. In fact, that one equivalent to profit, but we don't call that. Direct costs of Sbir and Stdr, including service, salary, purchase of supply, conduct testing, all those items. Occasionally, they allow you to reimburse the conference. For example, once a year, the national conference organized by the federal government. Generally speaking, Sbir and Stdr, they do not cover direct costs if you try to purchase capital equipment. For example, you want to spend a lot of money to buy huge equipment, they are not going to reimburse you. Indirect costs a lot of time come with a percentage. For example, you can benchmark and say 30 to 35% equivalent of the direct cost is my overhead. That will be allowed. And by the way, if you continue Sbir and Stdr go to the later phase and eventually enter the contract negotiation for the phase 3 and the procurement, you probably need to stick with the same percentage of overhead. If you want to change that number, you need to come up with the reason and evidence to support why you want to change it. The last portion is so-called fee. In fact, that's a profit. For the whole budget, you can ask for anything between 7% to 11% of the total budget as your fee. 7-11, easy to remember. But nowadays, it would be a safe bet if you ask for 7% of the fee. The difference makes the fee between the fee and the other two portions is direct costs and indirect costs. You need to show the evidence such as receipt or the timesheet, how many hours your people worked. Without those evidence, they are not going to reimburse you. For those 7% of the fee, you can spend any way you want. You can use that one to international conference, which is cannot be reimbursed directly. So that is the money at your freedom, at your wish. Registration is very important to apply for Sbir and Stdr. Across all of the 11 funding agencies, there are 3 registers are mandatory. One is DONS, the second one called SAM, the last one is SBA registry. Please pay attention to some of them, such as SAM, because that registration can take a very long time. What does SAM do? Simply speaking, without SAM, the government are not going to pay you. Individual agencies have their own requirement for additional registry. For example, some agencies ask you to sign up grant.gov because if your application is ready, you need to submit your application on that website. So let's revisit collaboration and subcontract again. When you prepare for those, you are likely to interact with the university or resource outside the university to look for subcontractor and consultant. What are the differences between subcontractor and consultant? Subcontractor, generally speaking, refer to an agency or another firm. Consultant most likely refers to the individual. Eventually, you're going to pay them on 1099. For the university, especially for STTR, if you have the IP and the tech transfer collaboration, and also in case of Sbir, you can use university for 1/3 to 1/2 of the Sbir capacity. You can negotiate with the right party with the university. Please understand the time process to work with the university. When you submit your application, you need to show the commitment your collaboration is in shape. For example, if you had a nice conversation with a university professor and he or she promised they are going to work with you. You can't just take the word or the email. In fact, you need to show the proof university side is committed to work with you. There could be implication of the IP, whether IP or yours or university have a say in that. And also there will be the budget and funding, even before the money is approved. Office of Research Administration from university side probably want to have a look. Therefore, please allow some time in advance to discuss and interact with the university and see what kind of process need to come through and what kind of thing can include in your application. In our area, University of Maryland system, it is a good idea to reach out Venture or Office of Technology and Commercialization, OTC, the division Ella is working for, to start your conversation with them because they have knowledge to help you to navigate the process. What are the timeline or time cycle for the application? This is an example for 1 year. The smaller agency, they make one announcement per year. The big agency like NIH, DOD, and the National Science Foundation, they can make as many as 3 announcements per year. The busy time for the announcement to come out is in summer, such as July. The deadline for a lot of those announcements, they are going to be in fall, like October or November. In the second half of this year, in fact, April is an important deadline for a lot of application. If you're still interested and think you have the capacity to put up a quick application, you can look into announcement. The deadline ends up in April. Let's say you are interested in Sbir and Stdr, but you haven't decided whether to put your time and effort to apply for that. There's something you can prepare, which means you can start to track and look into that to see whether you can fit. So I recommend the following action for you. You can do the research of the previous announcement, because year by year, the majority of the announcement from the same agency, they are the same, with some changes in some portion. On the right side of the screen, you can see this is 2019 NASA announcement. And you are looking at the topic part, what kind of topics they are interested in. So for year 2020, 2021, some of the topic will stay and some new topic will show up. In the old announcement, you need to pay attention to the checklist because those are the items you have to include in your application. By the way, among every 10 applications, 1 application never gets reviewed because they didn't complete the checklist. They don't have all the items. Therefore, the reviewer just discards them because that will become waste of the time. When you look into the checklist, identify the one you don't have yet, especially the one probably take much longer time. When you do those research, you probably have a good sense how much time going to take you to put the application together. Will that one be 100 hours or 300 hours? And also you can come up a plan to plan your timeline. Should I start 10 weeks before deadline, or should I start like 3 or 4 months before the deadline? You also need to pay special attention. Some items you do have to start much more early. For example, a discussion of potential collaboration. That one you probably need to start sooner than later. And also certain registry, like SAM, you need to register at least 2 months before the deadline of application. So that concludes my third part. Finally, depend on the interest and the need in our community of Sbir and Stdr application. We may consider the future event. For example, if there's enough interest, we can continue with more webinar about Sbir and Stdr. especially around the time of announcement. After today's webinar, I will talk to Ella to see whether we can send out a survey to you so that we can understand your need and your interest of Sbir and STTR specifically so that we can better help you. We can also try a little bit more ambitious initiative, which is a cohort program. If we have enough number of the startup want to apply Sbir and Stdr for the next season, let's say the summer season, where we have the deadline in fall, we are going to have a multi-week program. The format can be, we meet once a week for 1 hour or 1.5. And for every week meeting, there will be certain item we are going to help you or track you to complete. It's almost like homework. For example, in week 1, you need to finish item ABC. For week 2, you have to move on to complete item E and F. The value for those kind of cohort program is we want to generate a kind of team effort, coordinated effort, so that you are on track and have urgency to complete the application. And also because there are many teams participate at the same time, we will generate a sense of the peer pressure, almost like you go to gym to work out in a studio class with a lot of people next to you sweating. You cannot slow down and you have to keep pushing yourself to keep up everybody else because they already finished those items and you are lagging behind. So we want to generate those kind of peer pressure so that you can finish your application in time. In this process, we can also observe your need. In case you face some difficulty and challenge, we will see what kind of resource in our innovation ecosystem we can connect you with. The expected outcome is to increase the success rate of application. As I mentioned, phase 1 have on average about 15% applicants they eventually get funded. Could we make this program work and we can increase that number to 30% or even 40%? So that's something we can all think about. By saying that, those are just early ideas. If you are interested and have feedback from you, from our side, we also need to look into our capacity because some of the work need a lot of time and resource. We have to look inside whether we have capacity to support those. That's all I want to talk today. So I'm going to hand my mic over to Ella. Ella, please.
So Alex, we do have a question. So here's the question. How do you define a strong team? How many people, diverse experience, how mature the startup should be for SBIR, STTR phase 1 funding, stage of technology, number of employees, business establishment and such.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. Those are all very good points, okay?
Very good question.
Yeah. The definition of the strong team, I can't speak for everybody because different agencies, they have different structure of the review. Depend on individual reviewer, they may have their own metric, okay? Allow me to say, if I'm a general reviewer, take a kind of objective one rather than my personal style. The way I look at the strong team is a few resumes together in the application. Let's say we have people from your company. I'm looking at your education background, your working experience, what kind of thing you have done really stick out, whether you have publication, how many patents you hold, and also how many years the job experience you have done. For example, some people work for big corporation. That expertise specifically align with what you are doing. That establishes you very strong in technology, especially the big corporation you work with. That one indeed they launch new products. So I will have a very good feeling, give you a thumb up, okay? The other thing is, if you are so-called serial entrepreneur, this is not the first company you launch. You have launched the company before on your resume. Why I say that? I know you are relatively experienced. Therefore, you are not going to make a rookie mistake, presumably, okay? The other thing is I'm also looking into your team member. For example, you recruit a college professor as your collaborator, all the piece of paper were there, university signed off, say, yeah, they can collaborate with you, you reach IP term or something, there should be no problem if we approve you. I'm looking at how prestigious that professor is, what kind of publication he has. Is he widely regarded as an expert in the field, or his research is only marginally overlapped with what you are doing? Because we don't some so-called figurehead. You just use a big name of some professor, no matter his research relevant with you or not. The other speculation is we want to see whether the professor is going to spend 2 hours per week or 10 hours per week to work for you, because the outcome are very different. And some application, they just try to take the reputation, use a name. And in fact, the prestigious researcher from university, the company do not count on them to do anything. So that one in the application, sometimes we can tell. So that's the answer to your question. The other part of the question, I probably don't cover all of them, but you also ask how mature the company is to apply for Sbr and Stdr. The reason they launched the program is try to target on early startup before you can get investment from the private sector, which means before venture capital or even angel investor put money in your company, you can apply for SBIR and STTR. So my understanding that also one of the reasons they are shying away from the company already have venture capital invested. So my thing is, in our area, we probably refer to somewhere like before pre-seed or probably cover pre-seed. If you think the seed round investment is, let's say, on average is $1 million, $1 million almost as much as a very big phase 2. So once they see you have the seed investor or venture capital, they probably assume you should have enough money without SBIR and STTR to do work. So in summary, my answer is it's very, very early startup, and most likely the pre-seed company will be eligible. By saying that, we do have example in our DMV area, as far as I know, they have been around for 5 or 6 years, but they are not the one taking off. They have been hunting around, they get one SBIR phase 1 after the other one. Sorry to say, never grow up, but they continue to get SBIR. So that is also an interesting observation, I will say.
Thank you, Alex. We do have another question. So the next question is, how do you best respond to SBIR reviews for further input and modifications?
Okay, so if I understand correctly, you already submit your SBIR application and then the review came back with certain kind of opinion. It depends because the issue could be the technology is not innovative enough. If that's the case, you need to make sure they indeed understand the unique aspect and then the true value of technology. Because the reviewer side, there are different types of the reviewer. Sometimes they use an internal reviewer, or I will say you may see a term called a TA, topic author or topic expert. Those are the people come up with the topic in the announcement, okay? Sometimes they're also the reviewer. Not all of them exactly understand your technology because some field is very broad. So you need to articulate. So you push back, tell them what exactly mean my technology, okay? The other thing could cause trouble is your commercialization plan is not clear enough. Some agencies, they allow you or even encourage you to include letter of support. Letter of support, some of them, the most valuable can come from your potential customer, which means if your innovation is a medical device or digital health, you talk to some people in hospital, especially decision maker, such as chief information technology officer of the hospital. You don't have to go to CFO or CEO because even their support, their opinion is not really the expert, okay? If you get letter of support from those people, that is a demonstration that the potential customer, they are interested. If we make the prototype happen, they probably want it, okay? So you need to show there's certain evidence of letter of support. By saying that, some agencies, they decline letter of support. Some agencies, they do not want you to include those letters in your application, and you need to find out, okay? So one more reason will be the capacity. That one already we covered the topic of the team. If they question your capacity, they may wonder whether you have enough people to do that. What happens if your collaborator is all around the world, somebody in the West Coast, somebody in Europe? Can they really have time or come together to work? All those kind of things they think about, because one headache from the government side to work with a small company is they don't have vision how capable, how efficient you can really conduct the work in time. So when the red flag shows up, your people everywhere, or you do not have the list of the people who committed to work with you, that's probably a problem, okay? On top of that one, they may also consider where your company based at. Are you based on an incubator? Do you have your equipment? Do you have access to your lab? All those kind of things, okay? And by saying that, it's also relevant to another topic, which we are not going to get in more, which is the audit. If you move on to the phase 2, they could conduct audit before or after the project. And that one essentially bring more issue. For example, do you have the machine to punch the time card? Because anything you include in the budget, you need to show the evidence from 9 to 5. I have this person worked for me, and from 11 to 3, this person worked for me for 4 hours. Okay, so all those kind of things could become issue, and they could be included in your feedback. By saying that, communication is very important. Before you submit your application, there will be a time window after announcement, and before the deadline, you're allowed to talk to the agency. Sometimes it's a program officer, sometimes it is a topic author. You can email them, submit your question online, or you can schedule a phone call. The purpose for those is to understand exactly what they are looking for, to clarify. Their answer can be specifically for you, or in some occasion, you ask the question, they pose an answer so that everybody can see it, depend on the agency. So that is a kind of before you get the feedback. So before you submit the application, it's probably very helpful, and if it's allowed, to talk to them to get a feeling what their expectation to your team, to your capacity, what kind of things they regard as truly innovative, and how much the topic author familiar with your field. So in summary, that's what I can see depend on which category and also the situation of the reviewer. I hope the answer can help.
Thank you, Alex. So we have a lot of thank yous in the chat saying that was an excellent presentation. I would like to, let's see if I can do that. So I would like to introduce a poll just to ask you about the presentation, mostly about the topic, the value, and if you would be interested in similar topic, a follow-up presentation. We do take your opinion very seriously when we plan our next round of workshops, so please do let us know. In the meantime, so while you're voting, please submit. We still have, I think, 3 more minutes. So if you have any additional questions, please submit them. So we keep getting the, thank you so much, Alex, very informative, excellent presentation, and so on and so forth. But so just to let you know, we recorded this presentation, and we'll post a video of this on our YouTube channel in a few days. So you can go back and check. And also, if you would like to see the slides, send me an email and I will send you the copy of the slides. So I'm going to share the results of the polling. Looks like Alex everybody found it very useful, and the topic was very important. And everybody who voted would like to see a follow-up workshop with more information on this topic. So you're not off the hook, Alex.
I understand. And by the way, Ala, and also David is here. Sbir and STTR is one component of our ecosystem. In fact, we have Cohort Program ongoing, and we also have other initiatives. Personally, and also Ala, we work on commercialization fund called MDDF, which makes a prototype of medical device. Therefore, in our university system and also in our area, we have a lot of resource depending on which stage your company is and what kind of resource you are looking for. So that also echoed to the question, one of the attendees, she asked, how mature is the company to apply for that? So iCorp, MDDF, SBR, and STTR, some of them, they probably fit you better than the others. So talk to people to find out. And I find iCorp and a few other initiatives very helpful, okay?
Absolutely. I'm gonna